We are live.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. My name is Mark DeMayo. I'm your host. I'm here with my co-host, my partner in all things law enforcement, the very handsome Bill Cannon. What's up, Bill?
How you doing, Mark? We had a real banger of a show last night. We did a real crime episode, the case of the missing 5-year-old from Tennessee, Summer Wells, and we had 865 new people become members of the Police Off the Cuff family by becoming subscribers. I want to thank each and every one of them. I can't thank you by name, but thank you so much. You will not regret becoming members of the Police Off the Cuff family. We have some outstanding material in our archives, and we're coming up with some really outstanding shows in the future. And Mark, they haven't met you yet, so say hello to those.
Speaking of our archives, we have a frequent guest. He's sitting in with us tonight. We're going to be talking, breaking down the diaphragm law, basically. We have another guest we're waiting to join us. He's running a little late, but we're going to welcome a frequent guest, another handsome guy, an attorney at law, retired NYPD cop. What's up, Joe Murray? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I love the show, guys. You know that, and I support what you do. It's such an important message that you put out there. So I'm happy to contribute, and thanks for having me.
No, we need you tonight. You're our legal expert. You've become our legal expert as we go through dissecting this diaphragm law, this diabolical diaphragm law.
I love that. Diabolical. That's great. You're right.
It's so stupid. But oh, look, he's got the Police Off the Cuff mug too. There you go.
Yes.
But I just before we go any further, you mentioned the great show that you had yesterday. You had Duty Ron on, you had Joe on, and you Irma Rivera, and you were covering the who knows, maybe it's the abduction or the murder of the little girl, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What's her name? Summer?
Her name is Summer Wells, and she's a 5-year-old girl who's been missing now for 3 weeks. And there's a lot of speculation that her family could be involved, specifically her mother and father. And it's a little bit complicated, and I can't go into it again right now. But we're hoping that the girl returns home safely. But right now, it's.
I'll tell you how I heard what happened was because my girlfriend was. I don't know, she's a big fan of crime, true crime, and she listens to those podcasts. And I woke up this morning, and I heard your voice, like on the other side of the bed. And I'm like, what the hell? What? I thought it was that.
I didn't sleep over either.
So I'm like, this is so weird right now. So I turned over, and sure enough, she's listening to that episode, which I heard most of it. It was a great episode. So I really gotta hand it to you, man. That was beautiful work.
Thank you very much. You know, we had Irma. People love Irma Rivera. They just
how could you not?
How could you not? Phil Grimaldi, straight out of Brooklyn, not out of Compton, straight out of Brooklyn, and of course we had Duty Ron, who's he's a popular podcaster. For today's episode, guys, I'm just going to show the fans and the non-police personnel out there a little video that shows what the diaphragm law is, or shows someone in motion trying to make an arrest and putting their knee into the back of a perpetrator.
Police department, I was hoping that I was wrong, but the fact is I wasn't, and the reality is it's actually much worse than I imagined. Watch this.
A new city bill, which the department unsuccessfully advocated to amend, makes it a misdemeanor the acts of sitting, kneeling, or standing on the chest or back of a subject in a manner that compresses the diaphragm.
I cannot kneel on the subject's back. I cannot sit on the subject's back. I cannot kneel on the subject's chest. I cannot sit on the subject's chest.
As I fear, the safest and most basic non-violent control techniques of jiu-jitsu used by literally hundreds of thousands of people every single day have been criminalized in New York City. And if you think that's bad, it actually gets worse. These non-violent control techniques are criminal acts, even if unintentional and no injury was sustained by the suspect. Listen to this.
These acts are defined by the new law as criminal acts, even if an act was unintentional and no injury was sustained by the subject.
I don't care who you are. If this doesn't concern you greatly, let me put it into context. Even the best police officer in the history of New York City, someone who only arrests absolute criminals and someone who spent years and years and years developing a jiu-jitsu skill set so that they could effectively control an unruly and even violent suspect without causing any harm to the suspect or to themselves in the process. That police officer will face criminal charges if they put their nonviolent skills to use. Maybe you're a civilian and you don't see any problem with this. Well, let me explain this crystal clear. By criminalizing nonviolent control tactics, you are encouraging violent tactics sooner than necessary. So impact weapons, baton, pepper spray, taser, fists, punches, strikes, all of these are going to be encouraged and authorized before the use of a nonviolent mount position. Listen, you guys, if I was going to get arrested, I would rather be arrested 10 times to 1 by an officer who knows jiu-jitsu, knows how to control someone non-violently, than the officer who is so fearful of using these non-violent control tactics, so fearful of touching someone's diaphragm that they instead go to a taser or prematurely to a firearm in order to control someone during an arrest. Now, there are some good measures in this bill, but this one in particular regarding the elimination of the most basic non-violent control tactics is an absolute disaster. But it shouldn't come as a huge surprise to any of us. This is what happens when critical policing decisions are made by a room full of suits at city council, none of whom have ever been arrested or ever been into a real street fight. And here they are deciding the future of policing in New York City. I've spoken to several officers in New York City, and morale could not be any lower. Many of them are considering early retirement because it's just not worth it. Even if they arrest someone perfectly and effectively and justifiably, they could face criminal charges.
What do you think there, Joe?
He just hit it right on the head. And I'm just thinking about all the arrest situations where I had to use force. I mean, I was trained as a boxer. I'm not in jiu-jitsu, so I'm less inclined to use these types of restraints. And I'm more inclined to use my fists, which cause much more damage. And if I was properly trained in these jiu-jitsu restraints and they were legal, I think the public would fare so much better for police officers to use these, constraints. But
he mentioned something that was very interesting in that they're more likely to go to the taser, the firearm, but they also mentioned the nightstick, which I don't even know if anybody carries anymore. That thing is, when we came out of the academy, they handed us a bunch of stuff. I remember I got a flapjack. What was that called? The blackjack?
Yeah,
it was the billet, that little thing, the billet.
Well, no, but they also gave you that thing. It was lead. It was you put it in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
Well, that was a slapper. That was illegal.
that didn't come from the academy.
No, you got that from the black market.
Oh man, I had one anyway. Yeah. But it's an incredible thing. It's like. So you're taking away all their weapons. That's what they did first, and now you're taking away, even if you're like a good grappler, let's say, and you can handle yourself. And also these schools that I'm sure they had an abundance of law enforcement going towards them. These mixed martial arts schools. Now you can't use half the tactics that they're showing you.
Yeah,
in any way, when you take down a perp. Especially one that may be stronger than you, and you have multiple cops. You always want to take the guy to the ground, and that way you can get him under control. You can control his arms, get him cuffed, and to not be able to put your weight on him is just it's just ridiculous. And like the guy said on the video we just watched, a bunch of suits, that have never made an arrest, and he was probably mistaken because I bet you plenty of them have been arrested, and that's probably why they wrote this stupid law.
But the real goal, because the danger is a prolonged struggle. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody get zipped in the face with a razor and it smiles up, and it's horrendous. So the longer you're struggling with somebody, the more likely somebody's going to get hurt. I always had that fear. I've seen so many of those slashings, that I would get slashed wrestling around with somebody. So you want to end that confrontation immediately. And these grappling techniques work, holding somebody down while you get the hands behind their back. If you can't hold somebody down, I don't know how these cops are doing it today.
You know, I don't know either. And the point is, we hear this all the time is that, oh, the police need more training. And I've discussed this a million times. When politicians say that, they don't mean it. They don't mean that they want to give them more training, because training costs lots of money. And they're looking to defund the police, not refund the police. So when they say, oh, they need more training, again, they do not mean it. They don't want police to be proactive. They want them to be reactive.
It seems like all these bad guys get arrested after the fact. Like the detectives are going down to hunt them down. All the shootings, they get them after the fact. The assaults, they get them after the fact. Why not just make everybody a detective? You know what I'm just saying? Just have somebody come and take the report, because it seems like when they find out who this person is, they use different tactics to go and arrest them. You know what I'm saying? It's the surprise element. But when you're taking away,
apply to everyone, whether you're a detective or a police officer.
well, what I'm saying is that when you're going after somebody with an arrest team, the tactics are going to be different. It's not just, you're not reacting to something that just happened. So basically what you're going to create is a police force that's just going to be responding. They're not going to be proactive. If something happened to you, we're going to wait until it's over, let the bad guy get away, and then we're going to start our process, which is investigating who it was, getting an arrest team together, and then going after them.
I'm sure that's what they want, Mark, but your conviction rate is going to plummet, because when you can apprehend someone right on the scene, that helps, you know, the evidence of their being the right person, rather than picking somebody out of a lineup 2 weeks later and then apprehending them. You apprehended them on the scene.
Yeah.
And there may not be so many witnesses later on, but they're right there to do a show up, an ID, a lineup, if you do it immediately. So I think that is the goal. It's part of this decarceration, make effecting arrests and prosecuting as difficult as possible so nobody goes to prison. I think that's the goal here, but it's really just not in the public's interest.
Joe, I think you're 100% right. KJack Images, thank you so much for the $9.99 super chat. This is Police Off the Cuff, After Hours. Mark DeMeo and Bill Cannon. This is attorney Joe Murray, who's also a retired police officer, became an attorney after he did 15 years on the job. Now he's living large, multiple residences. He's got mad money. You know, he's doing great. Anyway, he's a frequent guest on our show, and we're discussing the diaphragm law, and we previously showed a video. And if you haven't been paying attention, the state Supreme Court reversed the diaphragm law as passed by the New York City Council and made it unconstitutional. And Joe is going to explain to us that there's a possibility they could reinstate this law if they rewrite it in a way that passes muster. You want to touch upon that, Joe?
Yeah, it's really scary because, there was another action brought just like a week after the New York City unions brought their action. It was by the state unions, state police, state corrections, parole. They all have to interact in the city, so they're just as much in jeopardy of, running afoul of this diaphragm law as city cops and superior officers, detectives. So they filed the same action, and both actions they filed a preliminary injunction, which is a provisional remedy to try to just stay the execution of that statute until the case has been decided. And it was shot down. But what's interesting is the judge acknowledged the constitutionality issues, saying that, that language is vague. So he gave them, they had to prevail on that point, likelihood of success. And then it was the detrimental harm that it would cause. And they're saying, and that's why he denied it. But then there was the subsequent motion for summary judgment. And it was summary judgment by the city. They thought they were going to win this. And then the unions cross-moved for summary judgment. But when the court decided it, I think correctly, with regards to the unconstitutional vagueness, statutes have to be written with clear language so that the average person can understand what's illegal, what's legal. And the way this whole statute, like the specific language that became an issue, where is it? Let me just look at it here. Is, all right. A person is guilty of criminal obstruction of breathing or blood circulation when with the intent to, oh wait, this is not it. This is the other one. Okay, here's the language. Or sitting, kneeling, or standing on the chest or back, and this is what was unconstitutionally vague, in a manner that compresses the diaphragm. Now I ask you, you guys are both cops, you've been out on the street. Is there any possible way you can determine that somebody's diaphragm is being compressed? You can't. It's
no,
impossible.
You can't. That's true.
Yep. You could see somebody's chest cavity being compressed, but that's not what makes it illegal. It's the diaphragm being compressed. And there was expert testimony by several people on both sides. And I think it was so clear by their papers looking at the argument. The police department had their experts and they were arguing, well, here is our training. We train officers to never sit, kneel, or stand on somebody's back or chest. Well, that's not what the law says. The law doesn't say don't ever sit, kneel, or stand on the back or chest. It says in a manner that compresses the diaphragm. Right. Now, if you can't define that and articulate how you can do that, legally or illegally, make that distinction, it's vague. It's unconstitutionally vague. You're making what the law is saying is that you can kneel, sit, or stand on somebody's chest or back, but not in a manner that compresses the diaphragm. So how can you tell, looking at somebody as a prosecutor, as a police officer, as a supervisor, whether or not they're actually compressing their diaphragm as they're sitting, kneeling, or standing? And I think it was so clear. And the city's papers ignored that issue. And that was the relevant issue. They completely ignored it and said, oh, we're able to train and we can clarify it through training by just telling everyone don't sit, kneel, or stand altogether. And that's insufficient. But now in the judge's decision, what he said, he actually, where is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote it down word for word so I wouldn't forget it. The judge told in the decision, where the heck is it? Damn it. Oh, shoot, I can't find it. But in essence, in the decision, he said that he sincerely hopes the city council will revisit this issue, this very important issue. So he's telling them that this one clause is what made it defective, and I hope you will take this back up to reenact this. That's what he's saying. And they can do it just by clarifying that language. They could change that instead of being in a manner that compresses the diaphragm, they could make it in a manner that compresses the chest. You could see a chest rising and falling. They could take it out altogether. Matter of fact, the city said, well, if that is the vague portion of the statute, we can sever that and the statute will be constitutional. So if you read it without that portion, it essentially says, restricts the flow of air or blood compressing the windpipe, carotid arteries, each side of the neck, or sitting, kneeling, or standing on the chest or back in the course of affecting or attempting to effect an arrest. Just make
Joe, I'm going to bring up one of the most egregious showings of the diaphragm law and how two cops from the 2-5 could have gotten killed from it. Before I go to that, I just want to thank Sip Some Tea with Maria for the $20 super chat. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Watch this video.
Kneeling on the chest, right?
Jumping out, grabbing me.
Dude, don't move.
Why y'all jumping out, grabbing me?
Don't move.
Standing up. Now it's a fight. Get him on the ground. This is such a good video because you even see this officer now holding the head. Well, is he coming dangerously close to the neck?
And Joe, my whole point is he's got a gun. He's got a
look at
gun.
this.
So their life was so endangered, and basically all four of them restricted his diaphragm. You want to lock up all four of them?
Yep. Incredible.
So now you have the perpetrator controlling the situation and him basically dictating to the police, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, because they can't put their weight on him to control this guy according to the law. And in no way am I criticizing those two officers from the 2-5.
Yes, of
they
course.
did a great job within the parameters that they are allowed. And but look at the danger they were put in.
Both physically of being injured and then also criminally. They're put in so much jeopardy right now, and I think that is the goal. They don't want officers to be proactive. They want you to take your time getting there, take a report, don't pursue anyone, and we'll deal with it later. And that's horrendous. That's a disservice to the public. But
You
know
you're
what?
absolutely right. That
Go ahead.
first portion of that video, they had him down, face down on the floor, two officers against this one person. It should have been it. Pin him down, pull his arms behind him, and it's over. For his safety and theirs, it's over. But you're not allowing officers to do that.
And there could be a situation where the officer's actually losing the battle at that point, where the perpetrator's on top of you. And then if you're lucky enough, you gain the advantage. Now you're on top of them. But once you're on top of them, then you've committed a crime. When they were on you, it's not a crime.
It's
Joe,
horrible.
does
I mean,
the provisions of Article 35 supersede this diaphragm law?
I was just going to say that Article 3530 of the penal law is the use of force by police to effect an arrest. And there is so many, the Attorney General's Police Accountability Act seeks to modify that. There's another bill in Albany that seeks to modify that. They want to change that as well, which is another reason, we didn't get into it yet. I was hoping John would be here, but there's another challenge that the unions made to it called preemption. When the state legislature has taken over the field of law, the city, they're preempted by the state, and the city can't intercede and change the law. And I think that was one of their best arguments. They lost that argument, but they filed a notice of appeal, and I think they'll win that on appeal. There is just so much out there now between the governor's executive orders, the state legislature. They're passing bill after bill after bill, creating a new office in the Attorney General's office for police accountability and investigation. All these new laws about the police stats, reporting uses of force, the body-worn cameras now required, and the other uses of force legislation that has passed. I think it's clear that the state has preempted it. And when you think about it from a context of that other lawsuit, the state unions, corrections, police, they filed a similar lawsuit. When I read theirs, I read it a little differently because, okay, they're state officers. They have jurisdiction throughout the state police. And now they have to worry about what's the law in this city, what's the law in that city. I don't think it's fair to them. And I think that's why the preemption argument is so much stronger when you're looking at it from that capacity.
Well, look at was it Yonkers PD that said that if something happens and the perpetrator goes back into the city, they're not going to chase him,
Yeah.
or vice versa,
Yep.
just because the diaphragm law here, if you get involved in something, that officer that's not even in the law in his jurisdiction, if he was helping out,
Once
Nassau and
again,
Suffolk
it's
County
good.
too.
It's good faith, right? These officers are helping and responding in good faith, which would have been protected under qualified immunity civilly. You know, they want to remove that. And now criminally, they're acting in good faith to try to assist officers who need help. And now they can't because of this.
Joe, one of the things that has been said, and I want to get your opinion on this, is that a strong mayor can back off the city council, can say, no, we're not doing that. But de Blasio was probably the weakest mayor in the history of the universe, not just New York City. And so when this diaphragm law passed, he couldn't wait to stamp it, approved, But if we get a stronger mayor, and maybe Adams will be a stronger mayor in regards to law and order, maybe he'll, put a little restraint on the city council from doing outrageous things like the diaphragm law.
It's just my unexpert opinion watching the city council. They love their little pet projects and all that, and they need the executive to pass these bills. So I'm sure there's a lot of bargaining and a negotiating that goes on. So yeah, a powerful mayor could be, or a strong mayor could be effective, and using his position, to advocate and negotiate, different bills or different language.
Hey, Brendan MCG says, Mark, all of the adjoining counties enacted a policy like that, like the diaphragm law. I don't know if is that correct too?
No, they adopted a policy where they wouldn't go into New York City to assist,
that's
because they would have to comply with New York City's diaphragm law. That's what he was talking about.
I thought they complied. I thought they enacted the diaphragm laws and those other ones too.
No. But the other thing is that when you talk to guys in some of the busier precincts, they say that a lot of the politicians in those precincts are saying they can't even believe that this law is enacted, and they wanted to overturn it. But then you see an awful lot of people that don't want to overturn it. You saw the 9 candidates for the Democratic nomination for mayor. The only one that maybe was against it was Adams. The rest of them were just tried and true, progressives. I use that word progressive because I don't want to use communist, but they were all for the diaphragm law.
Yeah, it's really so bad and I don't even want to say bad for policing. It's bad for the public.
Yes.
Look at the crime spikes we're having all around. That's a contributing factor. Mm-hmm. I told you, I represented a guy in a 7.7 with the firearm, and I was just talking to the cop, on the side about it. He gave it up. There was no issue. There was no pursuit. And I said, look, at this diaphragm law, what if this guy ran? He goes, if he ran, he would have got away. These cops realize that. That's a big
Joe,
issue.
how about in Chicago, where they're not allowed to chase?
Yeah.
How are those 100 shootings they had last weekend? How are they feeling now? 11 deaths.
I'm telling you, because
it's coming to New York too. Yeah. I want to go to a quick commercial, and then we'll get right back into this.
Sure.
Folks, if you're tired of living in the Northeast and you want to go down south for better weather, maybe less expensive housing, Carol Waters is a realtor down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. She was formerly a bartender for 20 years at the Fitzpatrick Hotel in Midtown. Her husband, Rob Mahan, was a NYPD police officer who rolled over to the FDNY. And together, they make an unbelievable team of real estate salespeople down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. In fact, they're $1 million salespeople. So if you're looking for a vacation home or you want to relocate, give Carol Waters a call, 914-261-6681, or you can email her at carolwaterssalesmb@gmail.com.
If you're a cop and you get jammed up, or if you're a civilian and you get jammed up, whatever you need, if you need a lawyer, you can only go. Why not just get the best lawyer you can possibly get? Jay Murray, law.com. Our guest tonight, Joe Murray, is a great lawyer. He not only helps law enforcement, civilians. He'll take up any case that it's worth it. And this is his information right here. You got his phone number, and it's jmurray/law.com. Visit that website and put the number in your phone. Trust me when I tell you, screenshot if you have to, 646-838-1702. I call that phone number up once a day just to make sure that I have it on my speed dial on my cell phone, just in case something happens.
I always want to call Joe, but I hope it's not for using him as an attorney. I hope it's to invite him on the show again, because he's, as you know, Mark, he's a huge supporter of police off the cuff, a huge supporter of the police, and a really fair guy that knows his job. And we're thrilled to have him here.
Thank you, guys.
Joe, we don't want to beat the diaphragm law. I was hoping John Monahan would be here, but he ran into some problems with traffic coming back up to Rockland County from Long Island. So I don't know if he's going to make it on the show. That's why it's so good that we do have you here. And one of the things I told you that we were going to talk about was it seems that everyone is panicking right now over gun violence. Voila, and not just New York City. As I said, Chicago on the July 4th weekend had 100 people shot, and 11 of those were killed, were homicides. New York City, I think last weekend had 26 people shot. So what is the recipe? How are we going to, combat this gun violence? And I'm going to let you answer that, but later on I'm going to tell you what our esteemed Governor Cuomo, who usually doesn't give a damn about crime, he enacted a program, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You want to comment on that, Joe?
Yeah, I definitely do. And this is why I love your show so much. I am so frustrated by this because, as you know, I ran for district attorney in 2019 for the Queens County District Attorney's Office. And one of the big issues that I was arguing, because remember, in 2019, the election was November of 2019, bail reform was coming in January of 2020.
There you are, ready for a fight. It's on the screen, Joe.
Yeah, there he is. The discovery reform was coming in 2020. Like all these things were coming. And one of the issues during our debate, we were on New York One and we had our debate, was gun violence. And all she talked about was, well, we have to go after traffickers because, you convict somebody, somebody uses a gun. It was outrageous what she said. Somebody uses a gun. It's not just the victim and the victim's family that's hurt by it. It's also the person who fires the gun and their family. Like that person's a victim. So, I was arguing and saying that all of these measures, the closing of Rikers Island, the diaphragm law, all of this stuff is just outrageous. It's going to lead to higher crime. And sure enough, here it is. And people are wondering how this all happened. And Governor Cuomo, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And then we have Governor Cuomo, like he's reinventing the wheel, trying to take credit and show that these are his ideas, most of which the NYPD was doing anyway. With anti-crime, the whole purpose of anti-crime was to remove guns. And, when he talks about target hotspots, what did the anti-crime do? They went to the hotspots in the precinct and they focused on that. Like there was so many initiatives, street crime. I worked in Midtown North. We saw them there regularly because we have tourists coming in from all over the world and they are preyed upon and victimized routinely. And these guys and gals were there using their skills to prevent these robberies and gun violence. So
Joe, Steve Colon loves to hear your expertise. And I love that he loves to hear it. And while he's throwing us a 1999 super chat, thank you so much, Steve Colon, for that 1999 super chat. And we love Joe's expertise too. That's why we have him on the show so often. And I'm just going to touch upon, Cuomo had a news conference at John Jay College of Criminal Justice on Tuesday, and he had passed an executive order that declared gun violence a disaster emergency. Did he just figure this out? Was he under a rock somewhere And did he just figure this out? And he came up with a 7-point plan that I'm going to mention. Treat gun violence like a public health emergency. You know, remember he would always give those COVID screenings every day. Well, John Monahan is here.
Oh, great.
John, how are you? I'm just gonna before we talk to you, I'm going through Cuomo's 7-point anti-gun plan, and then we'll get back to you in a second. Okay.
Okay, great.
Target hotspots with data and science. He was saying that all the time. We're going to look at the science. You know, he's one of those science guys. Unless the science disagrees with his ideology, then he's not a science guy. You know, we're going to look at the science and we're going to do it smart. You know, he's a real smart guy. Positive engagement with at-risk youth. I agree with that. That's very important. Break the cycle of violence. I don't know how he intends to do that, but that's...
Oh, wait, hold on a second, Bill. You say, like, I agree with that. Like, that's a good idea he came up with. We've been doing that in the police department for decades. I mean, the Cops and Kids program, the boxing, PAL, we've been doing this. And it's just not being supported. He should be earmarking funds for that program if he felt so strongly about it, instead of just squawking.
No, 100%. He cannot reinvent the wheel. Let me just get through these. Get illegal guns off the street. Voila. Stop, question, and frisk, Governor. How do we get them? But, you know, one of the things that the progressives, they don't differentiate between guns and illegal guns. To them, they're the same because the perpetrator is not important. The gun is the evil person. The gun, that inanimate object, is evil. Not the guy shooting the gun. It's the gun itself. I love this one. Number 6, keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. Wow. Where did you think of that? Yeah, that's a genius. And then rebuild the police community relationship. I don't know if it was broken, but he says we should rebuild it. All right. 77% of people shot in this city are people of color. And I think Cuomo just learned that because he declared gun violence a major civil rights issue. They always have to throw that in there, you know, because he's really not serious about fighting gun crime. He's serious about running for national office. And this is one of the ways he's going to do that. You can see I really enjoy Cuomo. I really like him a lot, you know. But anyway, that's his gun program. Captain John Monahan has arrived, and he was our guest of honor. And now we're going to punish him by showing some photos of him from back in the day.
Oh, no.
This photo here is a classic. We even have Detective Pat, one of our favorite guests. He's up in the front. I don't know what he was packing back then, maybe 240, 250, or maybe he was svelte. I don't know. But that's Detective Pat with Sergeant John Monahan right next to him. Look at this. This should be on a poster.
Billy, go back for a second to that.
Okay.
Picture. You being an actor, see, Patty is right to the left of me in the picture, right?
Right.
And see the guy standing behind me? Do you recognize him?
Oh yeah, he's an actor. Yeah, he was on Oz, right? He was on Oz.
Exactly. David Zayas.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's done a lot of work, that guy. Yeah. But I think this picture here, no, not that one. This one here, that should be like a police anti-recruitment poster. And of course, this you made captain and you're buffing out. That's your daughter there. Is that the daughter I met in Scotland?
Yes, it is, Billy. Yes,
well, tell her I said hello.
That's poor Noreen Monahan.
Wow. And here's another one.
London now. Oh,
no
look at that.
kidding.
The most beautiful girl in the world.
With your beautiful wife.
She's still.
Oh my God, Johnny
the
Mac.
Magnet.
And Johnny Mac is in the chat, and I had to throw this picture in, to throw him a little bone here, And here you are, and you can't hang out with anyone that's not Irish. You're unbelievable.
Stay there for 1 second. I got to tell you a funny story. I grew up down the Concourse, and then we moved up to Riverdale when I started high school, and we were frequent patrons of the Riverdale Steakhouse. And when my mom passed, we scheduled a dinner after the funeral mass there, right? Uh-huh. And it's the son now that runs it, and the daughters of Terry Connaughton. Terry Connaughton was on our job back in the 50s, retired, and he owned the steakhouse for decades. If you look closer between my head and Ray Kelly's, that's Terry Connaughton in the background.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that funny? That was at the residence of the Irish consulate.
Man, you can't do anything that's not Irish. Holy shit. That's
my
good,
other
though.
daughter lives in Dublin.
Wow, man. You're going back to your roots like a salmon. Anyway, but while we have you here, now, Joe, why don't you do the questioning? Because, Joe, you questioned John about what his testimony was since you are the legal expert.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, Bill.
I said, Joe, would you question John about what his Supreme Court testimony was that resulted in the reversal of the diaphragm law?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I blacked out here for a second. But John, I loved reading your bio. It was incredible.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
You know what you've done, Harvard trained. I mean, your credentials were exceptional. And it was you and former Commissioner Kelleher that provided these affidavits. And I think you guys hit it right on point. Did you find, I didn't review their training materials. I didn't get to go through that. It was included in their papers. But did you find that their training materials really just glossed over this? They didn't attack the real issue about the compression. And it was just essentially saying, don't sit, kneel, or stand on anyone while you're making an arrest.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, as far as their training documents, they tried. You know what I mean? Yeah, they tried. They were told to draw up a lesson that will put our people in compliance with this law, and it wasn't possible to do. So, you know, I'm going to talk about their training materials being insufficient, but of course they were insufficient because you cannot train people to do the impossible. You know, it was that simple. You know, it was really funny. Obviously, I wrote a long, detailed report, which became an affidavit. So the things in there, there were other comments on the training. They do a lot of role play training, right? And they took photographs. Are we still connected?
Yep. We're still here.
Yep,
Okay.
still
Sorry.
here.
Listen.
I had you on the screen by yourself. You had your chance at stardom, but you're trying to screw it up.
Okay. It was almost comical in that they did role plays and took still photos of people in compliance with the law, as is stated in their training materials, and the freaking cop had his arms around the guy's torso, where the diaphragm is. Like, here, you can do this, and this is how. And they show a picture of someone not doing it. Like, I'm not denigrating the people who drew up those training materials. You with me?
Right.
They did their job as best as they could. The law was not possible to draw up training materials to be in compliance with.
Right.
That's what it came down to. It was, this was, and Joe, maybe you can square me away on this. I don't believe the New York City Council is a legislative body. They're not there to write. They don't write laws. They were out of their depth. They didn't know what they were doing there. I mean, it was poorly written.
You're so right. They really don't know what they're doing. They're not good at what they're doing when they, write laws like this. But they are a legislative body, and they're allowed to write these, the administrative code, and that's what it is. So they have authority to do that. But I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the preemption argument. The preemption argument, I thought, was just as powerful, and the judge ignored it. I think on appeal, because they did appeal that preemption argument, I think on appeal they'll win the preemption, and that preemption will prohibit the city council from revisiting this. As you may be aware, in the decision, the judge actually went out of his way to tell the city council to sincerely revisit this issue, to rewrite it so that it's constitutionally permissive. And that scared the hell out of me, because it's really an easy fix for them to do. In fact, the city, in their opposition papers, they were actually saying to the judge, okay, if you are inclined to find that phrase is unconstitutionally vague, just take it out, which in effect would have made it completely illegal to sit, kneel, or stand on the chest or back of anyone while you're making an arrest. Here, at least they had the qualifier without compressing the diaphragm. The problem is it's an impossibility. You're 100% correct. There is no way for you to determine by looking at it as a police officer, a supervisor, how do you enforce it? You can't tell if the diaphragm is being compressed.
Joe, if I could just stop you guys for 1 second, and John I'm sure he will reiterate and have similar experiences. When I was a sergeant on patrol, there were many times when I would get a cop off someone's back who was already cuffed, say, get your knee out of his back. And sometimes they'd be pissed. What do you mean? So I'd be like, dude, his chest can't compress. He's cuffed. Get your knee off his back. Now you don't have to worry about putting all your weight on him. But to initially get him cuffed, you need to do that.
You know
That's
what
the real remedy, to
Yeah.
have other officers who are and supervisors who can, when they witness something that's excessive, restrain you. But that video you showed was so on point. They had the perp on the ground, face down. If they would have just froze him and pulled his arms behind his back, they could have had him. But they was, unable to, because I think the fear of running afoul of this law by, compressing the back, it's just too dangerous.
Those phrases, compressing the back, kneel, stand, sit on someone, have been in the patrol guide for a couple of decades now. To criminalize that is ridiculous. Billy, you said something interesting that, 20, 30 years ago, you were pulling cops off people who may have been sitting, kneeling, or standing on somebody. We have evolved. The NYPD has evolved in its training, its practices, and the way we do business like no other department. When this defund the police thing started out in the Midwest, and then it rolled in here to New York, and it was a couple thousand people in front of City Hall on the eve of the budget passing June 30th of last year. I could not believe that the city council went with them against the wishes of their actual constituents and passed this insane law. You're talking about Cuomo and the gun laws. They never check with their actual constituents. The people who live in these neighborhoods who love us and appreciate the job that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
No one checked with them. The law was so poorly written, and I don't believe it was done on purpose. They had to know it wasn't. You cannot.
It was horrible. There was no intent. There was no mens rea. There's no result of an injury required. It's just like a strict liability law.
Yeah.
Whether or not an injury is incurred. It's
And
horrible. I just want to ask you,
said,
I just want to ask you, the patrol guide section you're talking about, I believe there was other qualifying language, like unless absolutely necessary.
Right, there always is. Yes.
They eliminated that. They said in no certain terms, sitting, kneeling, or standing, that compresses the diaphragm, which is impossible to know.
Right. Well, the diaphragm was never in a patrol guide. That's ridiculous.
I'm talking about the
you
law
need an
now.
X-ray machine out on patrol with you.
John, but one of the Captain Monahan, we go a long way back. I worked with him in the 2-6 in 1990 when I got promoted. He got promoted 6 months before me, and he was already in the 2-6. And then I think he went to Manhattan North Task Force after that, right?
Right.
That was a long time ago, and you can see my hair isn't the same color, and neither is yours. Even though you're using the Grecian formula, you're using the Grecian formula 44. I didn't mean to out you. But anyway, one of the things we would hope is that these city councils, the mayors, the people that are trying to legislate would ask the experts whether there is any feasibility to what, but they don't. They're so arrogant that they ask no one.
Yeah. Even Eric Adams said that the other day when the law got thrown out, they asked him what he thought of it. And he even said that they should have consulted the experts in the field. Now, they claim to have done that. I don't know who they consulted. They didn't talk to you, Joe, right? They didn't talk to me.
No.
I don't know. They said that they did. They didn't offer any names. But this is obviously written by someone who's never had to put their hands on anybody who's resisting them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I said it to you the last time I was on here, Billy. Police science, they don't even believe that it is any type of body of academic and actual experience. They disregard it, disrespect it. It means nothing to them. We are not experts. They think any idiot can do the job. And, this whole profession, this really pisses me off when you see people like the city council and Cuomo and the state, and they write stuff and throw it down on the cops with no conversation with experts in the field. This whole profession, in our lifetime, it has gone from a blue-collar job to a white-collar profession. Think about this. You mentioned back in the day, right? I graduated high school in 1979. If you wanted to take a classes in criminal justice or police science, John Jay was the only place. right? Where you taught, Billy. I got my bachelor's there. That was the only place. Now, name a college that doesn't offer a degree or at least classes in that field. The entire profession, educational mandates. The first time they ever did that was 1988, the test that we took, Billy. We didn't get promoted. Remember Mike Flynn and Pete Manti? They didn't get this, however many credits, 64 credits. They got demoted after their probationary period.
Yeah, you know, and I remember Joe Toll, the president of the SBA union, he goes, "You take away one sergeant's rank and all of a sudden they're demoting guys left and right.
They demoted those two guys. They were the test case. Then they went back to school, got their credits, and got re-promoted. But my point is this. As the profession evolves, you can see it there. Educational mandates were a brand new thing. They had to break that culture, force that to happen. Now you have to have 96 credits for lieutenant, bachelor's degree to be a captain. And there are departments nationwide that won't hire someone without a bachelor's degree. Police science is a real thing. Joe, when we were young cops, if a guy retired and got a law degree, wow. I mean, it's still wow. Don't get me wrong, it's still wow. But there are far more guys now with law degrees that were cops. Like, we have evolved as a profession to the point where how can you deny that we know what we're talking about here? And yet they ignore it. They completely ignore it, disrespect all the body of knowledge and experience that we have for political reasons.
Well, John, we were talking before about how politicians love to say they need more training, but they really don't mean that because they don't want to pay for it. And it also, training takes a cop off the road.
I just had a case in Kingston or Ulster County, the law firms in Kingston. And it all came down to that. And training. You know what trumps training? Experience. Yeah. And the only good training, there's a big distinction between academic writings that you'll find in colleges that, people sit around with no experience. Hey, this is a good idea. And you know what? They're not bad ideas. I would agree with them. But you don't know how it's going to work in reality. Whereas proper training is born of after action reports. We know what happened here. This worked. Let's try and codify it. This failed. Let's prohibit that. Training built on actual experience. That's what we have, which tells you experience trumps training every time. Right. You take a guy out in the field in a radio car with you for 6 months. He's going to know a hell of a lot more than the guy that spent a year in the academy learning from an instructor who was ever in the field. So when we talk about training, I kind of chuckle like you said it, Billy. It's a panacea in their minds. Oh, more training, more training. No, you know what? They need to come out and see it from our view. Remember they used to take politicians to the fun house? Do they still do that?
Yeah, and they used to kill about 14 people, right?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the point, man. These politicians, before you can come out and write a law that's going to affect the way the cops do business, you need to go to the fun house. You know what I mean? At least that much.
John, they're so arrogant that they don't care. Letitia James wrote a hit report on the NYPD's response. I'm sure you know about it. Yeah. On the NYPD's response to last summer's riots, which of course they called protests. But she, knowing nothing about policing, nothing about how to respond to disorderly groups, she wrote this report, which was just a biased hit report, and the DOI did the same. Yeah. And they didn't have the people of quality, of knowledge, of knowing the profession that could,
Well, they were readily available to them, but they ignored them. That was just.
Of course they do. That's the arrogance of them. Yeah.
Well, they can get away with it. Listen, so often you hear guys say, and I've actually felt it myself at times, that I wish our unions had more power, that they could do more. But this is a case. 18 unions got together. 18 unions. That's a lot of juice. That's a lot of power. And then they went and hired one law firm to handle this compression law case, and they won. No one expected the motions for summary judgment to be, successful. I give these guys a lot of credit. Those 18 unions, Ed Mullins and all his guys got together and they hired that law firm who did a fantastic job on this thing. So, you know what? The unions really did a great job here. That got thrown out because of them. So
the unions do need to mobilize when there's. They did. Yeah, they absolutely did. I mean, yes. Ed Mullins has a fight right now where he's suing the police department for trying to silence him. CCRB is trying to silence the head of a union with their nonsensical saying, "Oh, he can't say that." And I love when Ed calls someone from the city council a little whore. And I love to see the guy's face when he calls the guy that. It's just amazing,
Yeah, but you're so right. I mean, what they did was brilliant. I read their papers. It was you read it. It was so logical and made sense. I'm disappointed in the preemption argument. I think the judge just didn't get it. There's
What is
clearly
the Joe? I'm not clear on what that means. The preemption argument.
Oh yeah, preemption is the state legislature. If there's two ways to preempt. You could do field preemption. In this area of law, we are supreme. We only have the right to legislate here.
Okay.
And then there's conflict preemption. If the state, who's the higher authority, if the state enacts a law and the local jurisdiction enacts something in conflict, it's stricken down because they have supremacy. So the preemption argument was put in there, but I think they could have added so much more. There was Cuomo's executive orders talking about, I think, they passed this legislation called the Say Their Name legislation. There were like 10 different bills on police conduct and police reform. They enacted two more by legislation, two more offices under the authority of the what do you call what's her name? Letitia James, the state attorney general. Two more offices under the attorney general to now look into this police conduct and misconduct. The state has clearly preempted this area of law, and they enacted another section of the law a week before this, 121-13A.
Oh, strangulation. Right.
Yeah, that was the highlight of the arguments there, and it clearly shows the intent of the legislature to control this area of law. I don't know how the judge didn't see it.
Joe, someone in the chat is calling you the silver fox and that you're so handsome. But the scary thing is it's a guy, so I'm a little nervous. And it's Duty Ron. But Duty Ron, thank you so much for that total of $15 super chat. You're right. Joe is the silver fox. He's very handsome. He's a big supporter. And we love him here on Police Off the Cuff. Guys, we're coming up on an hour. I just want to, for John Monahan, I want to promote his school a little bit. There he is teaching. He's as you can tell, he's an outstanding teacher. He owns a police promotion school called The Key, and he's living large. Him and Joe Murray, they should buy some land together. They got mad money. And there he is. There's the Three Shields. He's teaching those courses. And when you get promoted, and if you study with The Key, you will get promoted. They send you that little card there. Congratulations on your promotion.
Now, Billy, don't forget about my novels. The last time I was on here.
Oh my God. I can't even, something. I got to do more promotion for this guy. Then let me see. I got your novels somewhere.
Head on is one of the.
Not that one. That's.
Okay, here's the other
Guns of Antwerp.
That one. That's the one. Yeah.
How do you say that?
That's the first in the series.
The Guns of Antwerp. I don't have that.
Head
book.
On is the first. Now bring up Guns of Antwerp.
I don't have the picture. I'm sorry.
But
I'll say it. The Guns of Antwerp. Hey, do you own a car wash or something I can promote too? What else do you have? Holy shit!
Where do we find these books?
I promote his books. I tell everyone he's a great teacher. Anything else? Are you selling anything out of your yard? What do you got? Got a garage sale coming up?
Where do we get the books, on Amazon?
Yeah, or Barnes and Noble. Yeah.
All right. The Guns of Antwerp.
John, you're a fantastic. You're a really smart guy. I know you and this is the Irish connection from the Bronx. In fact, I'll mention his name. Joe Kane is my accountant, and they're asshole buddies too, Joe and John Monahan. And it's the Irish connection from the Bronx. And I never knew that Irish guys were that smart till I met these guys, And I was like, oh man, these guys are pretty damn smart. I mean, maybe I'll hire Joe Kane as my accountant, and I've never regretted it. Captain Joe Kane. Finest Financial.
On the stage in the Monkey Barrel on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh.
I met his daughter in Scotland. I was doing a comedy show over in Scotland, right at the Monkey Barrel, and he told me his daughter's there, and she came to the show. It was great. It was great to see someone. But John, you're a real asset to the NYPD, and we're hoping that this diaphragm law is going to stay not a law. And the
let
city.
me ask Joe a question. I thought
Sure.
when the judge said, please revisit this more sincerely, I thought he was just throwing a bone politically, like, hey, I'm a Democrat. I don't, no hard feelings. But that was a sincere thing. And then you think they're going to revisit it?
I really believe that this judge was almost apologetic.
That's what it
Because
sounded
it was
like.
so obvious by your testimony, and it was former Commissioner Kelleher also put in an affidavit. It was so clear, and they had medical people testify that
Right.
you cannot tell if the diaphragm is going to be compressed by this. There's no way to really.
So you think he was sincere when
differentiate.
he told them to revisit it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because don't forget, the city's opposition. They said, okay, Judge, even if you are inclined to find that to be vague, strike that, and then it'll be fine the way it is. Leave the law intact. And he made a comment that said, I want to make note that nobody objected to the first part of the statute, which is the restriction of the neck, the arteries, and the breathing, obstruction of breathing. Nobody objected to that at all. So he's almost saying, like, just make that little fix, and this will be good.
You got it.
Joe, it's one of the bad things, and John
Billy, I'm
also.
sorry. I got to take off. We're losing power. Verizon finally answered the phone. I got to pick up on this.
All right, listen, we'll have to have you back in the future.
Joe,
But
great being here, and thank you.
Same here.
Thank you.
all right, John, we'll see you the next time. You can tell he's a brilliant guy, but he just he went to Long Island. Whenever you drive out to Long Island, you never know when you're going to come back. Because
I'd love to continue the conversation with him though, because there's a couple of things in his affidavit that I wanted to talk to him about. But great work.
Duty Ron says he gave us another $10. He said, Bill, with all the money that captain has, he has to buy a tried and true microphone.
But really, I want to just don't skip over this. The unions all came together. State unions and the local unions all came together. They filed this thing. It was brilliant. Everyone working hard this is how we're going to make things better, by coming together like this. And it's not over. And there are going to be other fights to come with this and other areas of law. But I love to see that collaborative working.
Well, Joe, the police needed a victory badly because we've been taking it on the chin for 2 or 3 years now. And this was a sorely needed victory, and we'll take it. We'll take one in the win column, We'll definitely.
Yes.
Black Rose, thank you for the $2 super chat. We appreciate anything. Pennies, nickels, I don't want to get carried away. But thank you so much. As I said, the police, we needed a victory, and this was a victory. Now we got to work on qualified immunity. We got to work on the defunded
And
the
we
police
got to work
thing.
on getting people into office. We have to focus on these elections. I love that you guys are politically involved and trying to promote certain things. We have to get the electorate out. They got to come out and support good people so we can make changes. We want to improve the city. We want to improve our quality of life. If we sit back and do nothing, these maniacs are going to ruin everything.
100%. Mark, any final words? You want to promote comedy? You want to promote us?
Well, I'll be at the Eastville Comedy Club if you're in Brooklyn tomorrow night, 8 p.m. showtime. And that's pretty much it for this weekend. But right now, thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming in. And once again, you're beautiful.
And, Duty Ron wants to promote the fact that he gave me this microphone, this Blue Yeti. He wants to promote it is a beautiful mic.
Yeah,
Duty Ron, thank you so much for the mic and all you do for us. Fuzzy Doxy, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. Guys, I have to mention, last night we did a show on the missing 5-year-old girl from Tennessee, Summer Wells. She's 5 years old. She's been missing for 3 weeks. It's a heartbreaking case. But we had a superstar NYPD panel, Irma Rivera, Phil Grimaldi, Duty Ron, and we took on the issues in the case, not criticizing any of the investigators from Tennessee or anywhere else that's working this case, but just giving our input with our background. And don't you know, we gained 865 new subscribers for the Police Off the Cuff family. And
Thank you guys so much.
Oh, that's the best we've ever did in one night. And, you know, we continue to grow this channel, and we're going to do some real spectacular things. We have a website now. We're coming up with a membership channel. Of course, we have our Patreon with the 3 different levels. And again, all you people that are Patreon members, thank you so much. That really keeps us afloat. And you people are giving us the super chats. I can't thank you enough. And as I said, 865 new subscribers to the Police Off the Cuff family, and we really, really appreciate that. Bob Starkman is in the chat. He's great friends with Joe Pistone. They buy their sunglasses at the same store. I think Joe Pistone gets them from the FBI equipment section. You know, he's got a new pair of sunglasses for every day. And Bob Starkman said, "Great job, you guys." And Bob, told me you were under the weather yesterday. I hope you're feeling better. Mark, any last words before we sign out?
No, it was a great show. Thanks, Joe. John's gone, but he's always great too. And what do we got coming up next?
I'd have to look at. Oh, actually, we have this Monday, Bert Ross, who happens to actually be my wife's uncle, who is he was the mayor of Fort Lee, New Jersey, at the age of 28. He was offered a $500,000 bribe for the mob to build a supermarket, a big mall, and he got wired by the FBI. A fabulous story. So we're going to have Bert on this Monday.
That's exciting.
And we're all doing, Mark and I are doing shows for our Patreon, just specifically for our Patreon customers, so that they don't feel that we're leaving them out. And you know something, we'll even just go on the Patreon and talk to you about current events of the day. Anyway, I'm Bill Cannon, and for Mark DeMeo, and of course, Joe Murray, our biggest benefactor fan. And he seems like he's on more podcasts than anyone else these days. And he's doing a great job. Folks, thank you so much for listening, and a good night.
Good night.